An 88-year-old woman just got absolutely flattened on a muddy football field. And somehow, that's the moment a billion-dollar brand stopped dying. Snickers wasn't some plucky underdog scraping its way to the top. They were a brand that had been on shelves around since 1930, raking in billions for over 80 years. But by 2009, they were quietly bleeding out. Market share tanked, sales were down globally, they fired their ad agency after a Super Bowl disaster. Once number one in the world, Snickers plummeted to number 7 in their own category. Not 7th among all snacks, 7th among chocolate bars. They were losing over $100 million every year. And then, in a single 30-second TV spot featuring a woman who was literally older than sliced bread, they turned the whole thing around. This is the story of how tackling Betty White saved Snickers. So how did Snickers fall so far? Let's go back to 2007. Snickers is working with ad agency BBDO, and they run a Super Bowl ad. Two mechanics are eating a Snickers bar from both ends, Lady and the Tramp style, until they accidentally kiss. Horrified, they yell,
"Quick, do something manly!"
and rip out their chest hair. That's the ad. Yeah, and it gets worse. The brand's website had alternate endings, showing the men violently attacking each other, while footage of NFL players from both Super Bowl teams reacted to the kiss with visible disgust. The Human Rights Campaign and GLAAD condemned it publicly. Snickers' parent company, Mars, pulled the commercial and website within days. What was meant to be edgy humor had turned into a PR catastrophe, fast. Snickers ended their relationship with BBDO, who had built the brand for decades, and switched agencies to start fresh. It didn't work. Between 2006 and 2009, Snickers lost nearly 10% of its global market share. 50% of buyers weren't coming back the following year. That means Mars had to replace half its customer base every 12 months just to stay flat. Not grow, just survive. But customers weren't leaving because they hated Snickers. They just forgot about it. In marketing, that's called losing mental availability, mind share. When your brand stops being the thing that comes to a customer's mind. And for a candy bar, that's basically the kiss of death. So in 2009, Mars did something gutsy. They went back to BBDO. Yes, the same agency they'd walked away from 2 years earlier after the disaster. And they handed them an ambitious brief. Make Snickers the world's favorite chocolate bar in all markets with just one campaign. Go. BBDO had a shot at redemption, and this time they couldn't blow it. They needed an idea so good, so universal, that it would turn Snickers around. And what they came up with wasn't what anyone expected. Peter Kane, copywriter and executive creative director, noticed something from the brand's own history. Snickers had historically done well when positioned as a way to satisfy hunger between meals. It was more substantial and filling than other candy bars, a real differentiator, if they could find a fresh way to communicate that. So the team went deep on research, specifically with men aged 18 to 49. They identified what they called a universal code of conduct by which men abide to maintain their position in the male pack. Status, belonging, fitting in with your crew, all were essential to that demographic. And then they asked, what threatens that? When do men risk losing their position in the pack? When do they suddenly become someone unrecognizable?
Can we turn the AC up? I'm dying back here.
It's on. Can't you feel it?
Can you feel that?
Oh.
Jeff, eat a Snickers, please.
Why?
Every time you get hungry, you turn into a diva. Just eat it so we can all coexist
Turn
in
into
here.
a diva.
Put it in your system, cranky pants.
Okay.
Thank you. Better? Better.
Hunger. When blood sugar drops, you get irritable. You get foggy. You get cranky in ways you'd never be if you'd just eaten. The science backs this. It's not a personality flaw, it's biology. But in the context of young men navigating social hierarchies, looking weak in front of your friends has real consequences. From that critical insight, James Miller, BBDO's global head of strategy for Mars, framed the creative direction. If hunger makes you cranky, you become Betty White.
What's your deal, man?
Come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
If it makes you a diva, you become Aretha Franklin.
Can we turn the AC up? I'm dying back here.
It's on.
If it makes you aggressive, you become Joe Pesci.
I'm not looking at it.
We're not good enough for you. You look for something else?
No, I don't know.
What are you, big supermodels?
And from that thinking, Peter Kane wrote 6 words that would run in 87 countries for the next 15 years. You're not you when you're hungry. Simple, empathetic, universal, and, more important than it sounds, it worked as both a diagnosis and a prescription. You're acting weird because you're hungry. Eat a Snickers.
Eat a Snickers. Better?
Problem solved. It was the kind of insight that makes you feel like the brand understands you, not that it's selling to you. David Lubarz, BBDO's chairman and chief creative officer, described by Forbes as one of the top 10 creative directors of all time, gave his word. I promised it would be funny and high quality, but everybody could love it, like the Beatles. After 2007's disaster, that promise carried a lot of weight. Now that they had the idea, they needed to cast someone who embodied playing like garbage because you haven't eaten. Someone universally beloved. Someone surprising. Someone who, and this is key, you would never, in a million years, expect to see in a candy bar commercial. Betty White. By the time the Super Bowl rolled around in February 2010, White had just turned 88. She'd had a 7-decade career, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Golden Girls, but she was mostly seen as a beloved icon of a previous era. Nobody was putting her in Super Bowl spots. That's precisely what made her perfect. The director tapped for the job was Craig Gillespie, who'd go on to direct I, Tonya and Cruella. He understood that for this joke to land, everything around it needed to feel real. The muddy field had to look like an actual pickup game. The guys had to feel like actual guys. The absurdity only works when the world surrounding it is grounded. And then there was Betty. Peter Kane recalled, "She sat with us all day. We got to talk about her career and the Golden Girls and her love of animals. She was right in it with us. She was such an amazing comic actor, very down to earth. It was a great experience." White didn't just show up for a check. She committed to the physicality of the bit, getting tackled in the mud, hauling herself up, delivering her line with the timing of someone who'd been doing this since before most of the crew was born. Her comeback,
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby!
became one of the most quoted lines in advertising history. The commercial closes with a second player transforming into Abe Vigoda,
That hurt.
setting up one of the most important design principles of the whole campaign. It was built to expand. Anyone could be anyone when they were hungry. The formula was infinitely repeatable. But first, they had to prove it could survive one 30-second window in front of millions of people. The buy? A 30-second spot during Super Bowl 44. $2.5 to $3 million for airtime alone. For a brand that had been hemorrhaging market share for 3 years, during a recession where every budget dollar was scrutinized, this was a genuine bet-the-house moment. February 7th, 2010. Super Bowl 44. The New Orleans Saints versus the Indianapolis Colts.
It's going to the end zone, and the ball is caught. Touchdown, Indianapolis.
Over 106 million viewers tuned in, making it, at that moment, the most watched television program in American history. The game was competitive. The commercials were expensive. Doritos, Budweiser, Google, Volkswagen, Coca-Cola, all in the mix, all spending millions for 30 seconds of attention. And then, Betty White got tackled. Within 48 hours, Google and YouTube searches for Snickers spike 18,000%. USA Today's ad meter, at the time the most widely cited ranking of Super Bowl commercials, voted it the #1 ad of the night. Research firm Ipsos ASI ranked it the most entertaining, most unique, best liked, and most talked about Super Bowl ad, while also confirming it was equally liked by men and women, young and old. That last part mattered enormously given everything that happened in 2007. The earned media total was $28.6 million. That's unpaid impressions, news segments, social media shares, word of mouth. Against an initial media spend of roughly $2.5 million, that's an 11.4 times return on attention alone before a single additional Snickers was sold. But here's where the story gets genuinely strange. A fan named David Matthews had actually started a Facebook group the previous December, weeks before the Super Bowl even aired. It was called Betty White to Host SNL, Please? And by game day, it had 5,000 members. Then the Snickers commercial aired, and within weeks, that number exploded past 500,000. Traditional media picked it up. SNL noticed. On May 8, 2010, exactly 3 months after the Super Bowl, Betty White hosted Saturday Night Live.
I just can't believe I am hosting Saturday Night Live.
At 88 years old, she became the oldest person in the show's history to host. The episode drew 12.1 million viewers and a 5.8 rating in the age 18 to 49 demographic. It was the highest SNL rating in 18 months. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Rachel Dratch, Maya Rudolph, Anna Gasteyer, and Molly Shannon all came back just to share the stage with Betty. And that SNL appearance led directly to her landing the lead role in TV Land's Hot in Cleveland, which ran for 6 seasons. A 30-second candy bar ad about a woman getting tackled in the mud launched the most successful late-career renaissance in television history. Betty White became more famous at 88 than at any previous point in a 7-decade career. Time magazine included her in its 100 most influential people in the world list for 2010. She won an Emmy for the SNL appearance. She was everywhere. All because of a Snickers commercial. Now let's talk about what this actually did for the brand, because the cultural impact is impressive, but the business story is arguably even more impressive. In the first full year of the campaign, Snickers posted a 15.9% global sales increase. Volume, actual units sold, went up 16%. For an 80-year-old brand in a mature category during a post-recession market, that number is insane. Over 2 years, the campaign generated $376 million in additional sales. The brand climbed from number 7 globally to number 1, leapfrogging Kit Kat, M&M's, and every regional competitor. The campaign won nearly every major advertising award. USA Today Ad Meter number 1, Gold Effie in 2011, multiple Cannes Lions, induction into the Clio Hall of Fame in 2016, and Emmy nominations for Outstanding Commercial in 2011 and 2015. And the executions kept coming. Danny Trejo as an angry Marcia Brady in 2015. Steve Buscemi as Jan Brady, delivering the
Marcia.
Robin Williams as a manic football coach telling players to make little tea cozies.
I want you to make balloon animals. Tyler, make little tea cozies, something fun. Are you okay?
Willem Dafoe in a dress recreating Marilyn Monroe's famous subway grate scene in 2019. In the UK, Mr. Bean as a kung fu master who forgets all his moves, the first TV commercial Rowan Atkinson had made since the 1990s. Joan Collins and Stephanie Beacham as divas in a rugby team's locker room.
Witty.
Zip it, Shrimpy. You know, you're bad at football, but at least you're short.
87 countries, 15 years, still running. The most enduring advertising in history isn't built on a clever trick. It's built on something true, a thing people recognize without being told to recognize it. Hunger makes you someone else. You've felt it, I've felt it, every human on Earth has felt it. When you start from something that's real, you don't need shock value. You just need a great joke, a great cast, and the guts to put an 88-year-old woman in the mud during the most watched television event in American history. Snickers was dying. Betty White was an icon nobody was paying real attention to. Peter Kane had 6 words, and Craig Gillespie had a muddy field. 15 years later, Snickers is still the best-selling candy bar on the planet. Not bad for a 30-second ad that most of the industry thought was a strange idea. That's the Snickers story. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and check out our next episode. A brand that was losing money for 13 consecutive years decided the only way to save themselves was to put their failure in the headline.